Thank you, Miss Sarah. Just a few quick announcements that we do have. Please remember tomorrow evening, ladies' Bible study, 7 o'clock in the fellowship halls. My wife is going through the book of Revelation. So ladies, you make sure you come out for that. This coming Saturday, we have a teen activity. We're going to play top golf. Okay. If you'd like to go to that activity, and I open this up to anybody that wants to go. Okay. I just need you to sign up in the back. This is the last Sunday to do it because we're going Saturday. Okay. So I need to know how many bays to get, because they actually have bays where you rent them and you reserve them. And so if you would like to go, rain or shine, it doesn't matter if it's raining or not, because it's actually covered over so you don't get wet. So if you'd like to be a part of that, sign up on the back. The cost is $20. That covers your top golf and your food. So that'll be a wonderful time. It's just up in Virginia Beach. So if you'd like to go, you need to sign up this Sunday. Also, please remember that our missions conference is coming up on the 15th. Now, you may say, what is a missions conference? I'm glad you asked. A missions conference where we have our missionaries, some that we support, some that we may not, come in. We're having actually the renters, which we do support, going to the United Kingdom, are coming in. He's going to be speaking on Sunday all day with us. And then the Pepperdines are coming in from going to China. And yes, there are missionaries that are going to China. I know of at least in Vision Baptist, at least 5 or 6 different missionaries, the Tills, Pepperdines, and some others that are actually going to China, that have been in China, have come back out, and they're actually planting churches. It's quite interesting to see what's going on there. So we'd love to have you here on that Sunday, the 15th. We're going to have a covered dish luncheon right after the morning service. And there's a sign-up sheet in the back for you to sign up if you would like to help provide a meal for Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday for the families coming in. You can bring it up here to the church. You can put money in the plate for it. Just designate what it's for. But what we're going to do is on that Sunday, we're going to I want you to start praying about what you would be giving this year towards Faith Promise Missions. And we have something here. It's my Faith Promise Missions for World Evangelism. You'll get something that looks exactly like this, okay? On the back of it, it tells you what your Faith Promise plan, right here in the black. Over here, this is for your records, to remind yourself, how much did I pledge to give? I may not remember. If your memory is like mine, you may forget. Well, you put it down. On the other side's a little piece that you're going to tear off. This is what you put in the offering plate. Fairly simple. On the back, it says, among all nations, from Luke 24:47. On the front, you'll notice there's no place to put your name. Okay, this is between you and the Lord. Okay, but there are ways you can say, I'm going to give, I promised each week, promised each month, promised my life, which is even better. Okay, and we've been talking about that last week. We're going to talk about it again this week. And the amount. Okay, now if you look up there and you don't see a number that the Lord's laid on your heart to give, you can put other and put that down. I just ask you to fill it out completely, whether you're going to give it just monthly or whether you're going to give it weekly. This lets us know what we're looking at this upcoming year for our Faith Promise giving. Okay, and again, for the last week and the next 3 weeks, we're going to be talking about Faith Promise giving. Okay, and so these will be given out on the 15th. We'll take them up for about 2 or 3 weeks. I'm trying to tell you about it now so you'll get ready. Be praying now. Don't wait till that morning and go, I wonder how much I should give. You should be praying, Lord, show me a specific number that you'd have me to give, and then give it, okay? Because that's what we're going to be looking at. And I want you to make sure you get that down. Also, please remember the Men and Boys camping trip on the back. You can sign up for that. That's April 9th through the 11th, and make sure you get your money in for that. It's $25 a person, covers your camping, your food, and your live bait. And so you can't beat that for $25 for 3 days. I would suggest, if you've never gone, to go. Okay, you'll have a good time. Okay, unless you're a lady, then you won't. But the men will have a good time, I promise you, because this is going to be men and boys, and it's not going to be a place for, probably going to smell bad by the time we leave, but that's okay. We always enjoy the time together. So if you can come, sign up in the back. And so make sure also, again, about the retreat, you need to get that in just as soon as possible, okay? The money that, if you've put your name on the back for the teen retreat, you need to get your money in by next Sunday, okay? Designate it for teen retreat, put it in the offering plate so it's taken care of, all right? So want to have as many of our kids that can go, that want to go, to sign up and be a part of that. This time, the young people can be dismissed for junior church, if they will. Oh, I'm sorry. Hold on a minute. Hold on. Everybody come back in. Miss Rosa, can you stand? Miss Rosie, it's your birthday this week, and I almost forgot. Joe reminded me. You can talk to Joe later. It's your birthday, so let's sing happy birthday to Miss Rosa, okay? Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, God bless you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Miss Rosa. You can be seated now, and I can have Cova and Candy stand. Don't be looking down like you didn't know I was calling on you. Cova's looking down like this. I hope he doesn't call on me. He's probably because he can't remember how many years he's going to get. How many years is it, Cova? 30th anniversary. Hey, you put up with him that long. I love it. Well, let's sing happy anniversary to them, all right? And hopefully they have 31 after today. Let's sing happy anniversary to them, all right? Happy anniversary to you. Happy anniversary to you. Happy anniversary, God bless you. Happy anniversary to you. Now, you two can be seated. And then now the junior church kids can go out for junior church. And take your Bibles and turn to 2 Corinthians chapter 8. 2 Corinthians chapter 8. Last week, we looked at the example of faith promise missions. This week, we're going to look at the exhortation of faith promise missions. And again, these messages that we're going to be doing, I'm going to be doing for the next couple of weeks, are in preparation for our missions conference. And Dr. John Halsey, who just went to be with the Lord a few months ago, is where I'm getting the basis of these messages from. He wrote a book entitled Faith Promise, Grace Giving for Missionary Stewardship. I would challenge you to go on Amazon or so on and find the book, read it. It will do you a great deal of good. And so it's just a wonderful book. They talked about grace giving. And so I do miss Dr. Halsey. He was a good man, and I know where he's at. He wouldn't want to come back, but what a good, godly man that he is and was. One year, we look at these verses, 1 year prior to the writing to the letter to the Corinthians, the church had promised Paul. They said, we're going to give to the believers in Jerusalem. We're going to take up an offering, and we're going to give to their cause, and we're going to take care of this. And a year later, the people of Corinthians, the church of Corinth, had not kept their promise. Look, if you will, in 2 Corinthians 8, verse 10. It says, and herein I give my advice, for this is expedient for you who have begun before, not only to do, but also to be forward a year ago. In other words, he's saying, hey, you guys said you were going to do this a year ago and you still hadn't done it. And you know what? This is what happens a lot of times with believers today. Even today, they get caught up in something. They get caught up maybe in an emotional moment. Maybe they get caught up in something. I want to do these great things, and I'm going to just say, I'm going to do it. It's such a big deal. And then after the week goes by, they vow goes with it. And they quit giving, or they quit even doing anything. And this is exactly what we see going on here. Their emotions get stirred. And once the emotional impact has gone away, so does the giving. Well, Paul challenged the people of Corinth, by giving them an example of how the Macedonians had given. In 2 Corinthians 8, verses 1 through 5, we see him talking about the Macedonians. The Macedonians heard of what the Corinthians were doing and said, we want to do that too. We want to get involved, but the Macedonians actually went through with what they said they were going to do, while the people of Corinth didn't. Well, God bestowed grace on the ones in Macedonia. If you look at verse 1, it says, moreover, brethren, we do you to wit the grace of God bestowed on the churches in Macedonia. Grace is not bestowed upon someone for them to stow it away. If you think about it, God does not give us things for us just to hold on to them and not do something with them. Okay, this is what we're looking at here. God gave them something to do, and they used it. They were in great affliction, great poverty. Look at verse 2. How then a great trial of affliction, the abundance of your joy, and their deep poverty abounded unto the riches of their liberality. These people were hurting. This was a bad situation. You know what they did? They still gave. They still gave to see these people in Jerusalem that their need was met. They were practicing grace giving. It included both sacrifice and faith to do it. It wasn't just something they took, well, I'll look in my wallet, whatever I got in there, I'll throw it in. No, this was something they gave sacrificially. This means that if they gave it away, it may have hindered them in doing other things. It means they gave by faith, knowing that God would provide for the need. So they gave in this way. But how are they able to do this? Well, I believe if you'll look, it tells us in these verses. Look at verse 5. And this they did not as we hoped, but first gave their own selves to the Lord. They gave of themselves. This is what the main thing was. Folks, can I tell you something? We're going to hit on this quite a bit today. Giving is not so much of a money problem as it is a heart problem. Okay, we need to understand that. We will give to things that we love and cherish, will we not? Grandparents? Miss Candy, I see that look in your eye. She already knew what I was talking about. You'll give to those little darling grandchildren more than you probably would have ever thought about giving to your own kids. Why? Because you love them. And grandparents, folks, we understand this. When we went home to see our parents, they didn't care about us. They wanted to see the grandkids. They looked at us and said, oh, hey, how y'all doing? Get out of the way. Oh, come on. That was it. I mean, that was all they cared about. And that's what we need to understand. We will give to things that we love and that we care about, and we'll do it willingly, which we're going to look at in just a moment. Before the people, though, of Corinth could give, as the Macedonians could give, they first of all had to give themselves. And if you know the church of Corinth, and from 1st and 2nd Corinthians, they had a long way to go, folks. They were rough. It was a rough situation Paul was writing to them about. And so they first had to give themselves. So Paul commissions Titus to go to Corinth in verse 6. That's what he says, "There's so much that we desire Titus, that as he had begun, so he would also finish in you the same grace also." He sends Titus there to Corinth to complete the grace giving to the Corinthians. Titus's mission was to bring the people to the place where God could bestow the grace of giving to them. Titus did not focus upon their wallet. Titus focused upon their heart. Folks, do you know how people would like to give? You get people to give? You pluck on their heartstrings. You ever heard that? Oh, you got to give because this old lady over here is going to die if you don't give $1 million. Come on, how do you think Jim and Tammy Faye Baker made all their money? All the tears flowing down her face, the makeup just smearing all down. Oh, just like got to have the money. Okay, they were plucking on your heartstrings. Here, he's saying, you know what? I can pluck on your heartstrings, but I would rather God have you before you ever give any of the money that you have. And this is what he's trying to say here. It's a heart problem. And folks, that heart problem is not just in giving. It's in a lot of things, from church attendance, holiness in your living, faithfulness, and so soul winning, and so on. It's a heart problem. Folks, when we can look at somebody walking down the street and not look at them and think, I wonder if they know Christ. I wonder if they're on their way to hell today. There's a heart problem. There really is. We need to be thinking of those things. Those things should be upon our hearts and our minds. And so we look now in these verses. In verse 8, Paul gave Corinth 2 exhortations regarding faith promise. This is seen in verse 8. If you look at verse 8, it says, I speak not by commandment, but by occasion of the forwardness of others, and to prove the sincerity of your love. So we're going to look at 2 points today. The first one is give with an attitude of willingness. Now let's just stop real quick. I know you're going to look at me and go, Pastor, you're just wanting us to give more money to tithe. No, I'm not. I want you to give more to missions. I'll be real honest with you. I want us all to. I want us to see our missions increase because our faith has increased, because our willingness has increased. And here we're looking and seeing here that if verse 8, you're going to notice that believers are not commanded to give a grace giving or faith promise missions gift. Look what it says. I speak not by commandment. He's not saying you got to do it. You have to get up and do it. He's not saying that. We're commanded to do many things in the Word, witnessing, tithing, being faithful to read the Word, to pray, and so on and so forth. But this is not one of them, to give to Faith Promise Missions. This is why you give with an attitude of willingness. I'm willingly giving that to this missionary. I'm willingly giving this to see the gospel given out further and further through this world. We're commanded to evangelize the world, but we're not commanded to give this offering. Again, folks, understand this. God doesn't need our money, but God wants us to be willing. And He doesn't want us to be willing in just giving of faith promise missions. He wants us to be willing to give of ourselves. Here am I, Lord. What's the rest of it? Send me. Here am I, right here. I'm willing to go. Does that mean He's going to send you? No. But He wants us to be willing. That if He does say, I want you to go, I'm ready. Let's go do it. So we have to be willing. Look in verse 3. It says here, for to their power I bear record. Paul did not coerce them to give or put them into a guilt trip to give. He told them the need, and they willingly gave it. Some Christians take comfort in knowing that I don't have to give towards this because they didn't want to give anyway. Let's be honest with you. They don't want to give to missions. They don't care about it. This Christian, if that's you, by the way, if you feel like, well, whew, I'm glad I don't have to give that, you shouldn't be giving anyway. You shouldn't be giving a mission because in 2 Corinthians 8:12, if you'll look there, it says, for if there be first a willing mind. Again, you have to be willing. God just doesn't need the money. He wants us to have a willing mind, a willing heart, willing actions, willing giving, and just be willing in our own self. The context beginning in chapter 8 of 2 Corinthians all the way through chapter 9 shows us that the exhortation that Paul gives to faith promise giving. Look in chapter 9, verse 7. It says here, for every man according as he purposeth in his heart, so let him give, not grudgingly or of necessity, for God loveth a cheerful giver. Let me tell you what that means. That means that I cannot, as a Christian, tell another Christian what they should be giving for faith promise missions. Not my responsibility. Not my place. I should never look over at Kova and go, Kova, you should be giving $100 a week to missions. It's not my place. That's not me. I'm not God. So if somebody ever comes up to you and says, you should be giving X amount to faith promise missions, you know what? Look at them and say, it's not your place. When God tells me to give that, then I'll give it. But that's God's doings, not mine. This is the reason why we must first have to give ourselves. That's why it's so crucial that we do that. Each believer should ask God what and if they should give. God, what should I give? How should I give it? When should I give it? Weekly, monthly, yearly? How should I do it, Lord? Show me. And I promise you, if you ask, He'll show you. He'll lay it right out there for you. Too many times we get really unrealistic in our giving. Pick on Kova again over here. Kova, you got to give $100 a week. And Kova listens to me and goes, yep, I got to give $100 a week. And he made that first week go, I can do it. But after that, he goes, wait a minute. You start adding that up. I don't know if I got enough money to do that. And you know what happens? He gets discouraged. He goes, oh, man. And I've already wrote my pledge out and put it in the plate, and now I'm going to have to give it. And, oh, man. You know what? Go to chapter 9, verse 7. Again. So let him give, not grudgingly. You know what that's going to make Kova start doing? He's going to give, but he's going to give grudgingly. Check out. There's no joy in it. He's doing it because he feels like he has to. But then it says out of necessity. This means that you're feeling compelled to give. You're guilted into it. Well, the pastor said if I don't, then I'm a good for nothing rotten sinner. And I should be given twice as much as I'm supposed to be given as what I bring home in a paycheck every week. So I guess I better give it. They're given out of necessity. It tells us here, for God loveth a cheerful giver. Now, that means you're not going to do it grudgingly. You're not going to do it out of necessity. And think about this. If God loves a cheerful giver, I wonder what He thinks about a grumpy giver. Or somebody just throw it in. This is what He's talking about. This is what we need to see. If someone is unwilling to give to faith promise or unconvinced about faith promise, leave them alone. Don't push it. That's something the Lord's got to do. But it's something that we have to look at ourselves and see, what should Kevin Sin be giving? What should Chuck Allen be giving? What should different people, what should you be giving? That's something you have to decide. And remember, your faith promise is not your tithe. It's not part of your tithe. Let me put it to you this way. There's some churches, your tithe, missions is taken out of that tithe and goes to missions. Okay, that's how they support their missionaries in many denominations. They don't have a separate missions fund that you give like we do. Okay, I know when I was growing up in the Southern Baptist Church, pretty much that's how they did it. We had a missions offering twice a year. The Annie Armstrong and the Lottie Moon. And they gave us these little rice bowls. I'm not kidding. That you put change in. And that's one Sunday a month you come, and it's one Sunday a year, you come up and put it on the altar. And that was how you gave to missions. So you shove some money into a thing. I told my dad this. My dad goes, son, there's nothing different between the Southern Baptist and Independent Baptist. I said, Dad, you're wrong. I said, the biggest thing, first of all, is how they give in missions. I said, Dad, have you ever met one of your missionaries? He looked at me and went, no. I said, I know every one of our missionaries. I've sat down the meals with our missionaries. I know them. They write letters to us. I said, when was the last time you had them write a letter to your church? He goes, well, they don't. And I went, so how do you know what they're doing? You have no idea what's going on. I said, that's why we do faith promise. Because they just put their tithe check in and they take a lump sum of that and it would go towards missions. Well, see, with us, every dime that comes in from missions, guess where it goes? To missions. It goes to our missionaries. That's what it's taken care of. And that's what we need to see here. So if someone's unwilling to give, do not pressure them. It's not my place to pressure you to give. But if the Lord lays on your heart, I want to encourage you and exhort you to give if He lays on your heart to do it. The first exhortation in verse 8 states the offering is voluntary, willingly. Nobody's got their arm put behind your back and picking it. You got to give money for that. Uncommitted believers probably take comfort in these words and going, I don't have to do that. Isn't it fun? We laugh at that. A lot of people, I'm going to do just the bare minimum. Go back, though, to verse 8. I hate to burst your bubble. However, the next exhortation removes that comfort. It says in 2 Corinthians 8, verse 8, the last part, and it says, and to prove the sincerity of your love. So giving is an act of worship. Now, let's think about this. Faith promise is not commanded by God, but it does prove that the believer loves God and loves those that benefit from the giving. I'll pick on Kova again, which I enjoy doing. Kova comes to me this morning before the service began, and he said, Pastor, I have a need. I've got to have surgery next week. And before I can have that surgery, which is life-threatening, I've got to have $1,000 I don't have. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to come before the church. Church, Kova needs $1,000 because he has to have surgery coming up, and they won't touch him until he gets that $1,000. Now, I believe we have enough people sitting in here this morning that would be more than ready to give to help Kova reach that $1,000 mark. Do we not? Now, why? Why would you give anything to him? I mean, his wife wants to beat him up already because of what he said this morning. Yeah, I mean, think about it. Why would we do it? Because we love him. Now, how many people like Kova do you think there are in the world, or even in Elizabeth City, past St. County, that need money, that need something that we'd be willing to give to? What if Joe Schmo across the street that I don't even know who he is walks up to me and goes, I need $1,000 because I need surgery this week? How many of us are going to be willing to go, oh, sure, let me get some money out? I don't know him. I don't love him like I love Kova. Now, you understand? Do you understand this, what we're talking about here? We need to look at it. Love is a verb, not a noun. Love shows action. There's got to be some action behind the words. You know how easy it is to tell somebody I love you? I mean, come on, folks. So easy just go, I love you. Love you. Love you. It's another thing to show them that you love them. This is what he's saying here in verse 8. And to prove the sincerity of your love. How do you do that? You're going to be giving. That you promise to give. You're going to follow through on the promise that you promised you would give. Folks, love is not a feeling. Please understand that. Feelings can fade. Feelings can change, can't they? Some of you may have got up this morning with great feelings of joy, and then when you got into your car and it wouldn't start, the joy went away. And it changed your whole day, didn't it? Oh. Maybe you got this morning, man, I can't wait for the get going this day. This is great. And when you walk through the house, you crack your little toe on the side of the table, and all of a sudden the feelings go away of joy. Feelings can go away. Do you know that people can quit loving each other with feelings? See, it's going to be the actions. And you may say, Pastor, that's not true. Turn, if you will, with me to Matthew chapter 5. I want you to see what Jesus Christ said. Jesus Christ commands us to love our enemies. Do y'all believe that? If you turn to Matthew chapter 5:44, you're going to read it. He says, but I say unto you, love your enemies. Jesus Christ said that. Who's he saying that to? To you, to me? Now let me just say this. If loving our enemies, if love is a feeling about our enemies, it's going to be very hard for us to love our enemies if it's just a feeling. It's going to be very hard to love someone that hates me, that wants to harm me, and that maybe wants to kill me. It's going to be very hard to do that. So it can't be a feeling, can it? I'm to love my enemies. It is not a feeling that Jesus tells us to have. When Jesus gave us this command, he also gave us an explanation that we're to follow. Look at Matthew chapter 5, verse 44. It says, but I say unto you, love your enemies, bless them that curse you. Is that an action? You better believe it is. Do good to them that hate you. Is that an action? Yes. And pray for them which despitefully use you and persecute you. Is that an action? Yes. Wait a minute. You mean I actually have to do things for these people that I hate? No, remember, you love them, remember? Love your enemies. I'm going to bless them. I'm going to do good to them. I'm going to pray for them. Those are all actions. Things that we can do to show that we love them. That's exactly what we did when I talked about with Kova, wasn't it? I mean, I could have looked at Kova and said, Kova, I'm going to pray for you, brother. Or I could have looked at Kova when he told me and said, love you. Walked away. How good was that going to help him? He may be like, oh, okay. Thanks for nothing. He wants us to prove it. Love is not a feeling. Love is doing, and love is an action. So here, back in 2 Corinthians 8:8, after telling the Corinthians that the giving of faith promise offerings proved the sincerity of their love, he goes on to explain how Jesus proved the sincerity of his love. Look in 8 verse 9. For you know the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, that though he was rich, yet for our sakes he became poor, that through his poverty might be rich. Now think about this. He was the greatest grace giver ever, was Jesus Christ. And he gave us an example of it. He was rich, but he became poor. For who? For me. Think about this. All through the New Testament, we find this illustration. John 3:16, for God so loved the world that he what? Gave. Hey, guess what? That's an action, isn't it? He gave his only begotten son. Think about this one. Ephesians 2 verse 5 says, husbands, love your wives, even as Christ loved the church and gave himself for it. Tells us some things, doesn't it? Turn to Galatians chapter 2. Galatians 2 verse 20. If you're not there yet, I'm going to read it. It says, I am crucified with Christ, nevertheless I live, yet not I, but Christ liveth in me. And the life which I now live in the flesh, I live by the faith of the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself for me. He gave himself for me. We need to understand this in Galatians 2:20. In 1 John chapter 3, 1 John chapter 3, verse 16, it says this, hereby perceive we the love of God. This is how we see the love of God, because he laid down his life for us. Folks, these are examples of the love that he had for you and that he has for me. And this is the kind of love that we go back to 2 Corinthians 8:8 to prove the sincerity of your love. Now think about this. Our missionaries that we have on the board, our missionaries that we support every month, you may look at me and go, well, Pastor, I really don't know those missionaries that well. I'll say as nice as I can. Whose fault is that? We've had them here, every one of them. Why haven't you got to know them? Folks, I've seen we've had missionaries come in that some of y'all don't even come and speak to them. You want to get to know someone, you know what you do? You go up and talk to them. We go have a meal back here, you know what you do? You sit down with them and chat with them. You listen to them. You talk to them. You look at their displays. You take their prayer card. You pray for them. That's how you get to know them. And folks, the more you get to know them, guess what's going to happen? The more you're going to love them. I can't think of a missionary back there that I don't love. They're going out and preaching the gospel. They're going out and giving their lives for other people. And we see this example of it in Jesus Christ. The gift of God's Son on the cross provides absolute proof that he loves us. Now think about this. Our voluntary giving proves our love. We cannot love without giving. We can give without loving, but we cannot love without giving. We can give without loving. Folks, we can give to people. How many of y'all have ever given something to the people standing outside the department store ringing the bell at Christmas? And you go by and you throw something in. Did you do that because you love them? I don't know them. That bell's annoying. Clang, 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 clang. Merry Christmas. I just want to look at them and go, shh. Quit ringing the bell. But you know what happens? A lot of times we get guilted into it, don't we? We don't want to walk by that person, and they're looking at you. Merry Christmas! And you're going, yeah. And you start going, do I have any money? Do I have any change? Maybe I'll get something when I go inside. And we feel guilted about it. We're giving, but there's no love involved in it. But when we love someone, guess what? We'll be more than happy to give. When you love someone, you'll give the shirt off your back. You'll give all the time in the world. Did not Jesus Christ do that? It tells us here in verse 9, he was rich and became poor. He left heaven to take on the form of man to dwell among men. Do you think that was easy? Oh, Pastor, it's got to be a different way of giving. Got to be a different way of doing this. Got to be an easier way. He came and dwelt among his own brethren, and his brethren despised and hated him and rejected him. You think that was easy? He stood in Pilate's hall there, and they smote him and spit on him and plucked the hair out of his beard and so on and so forth. Think that was easy? They took and nailed him to the cross, dropped it in the ground where he hung upon that cross and died. Do you think that was easy? He proved the sincerity of his love for me by doing that. We prove the sincerity of our love to him and to the fellow people in this world that are going as missionaries by giving to Faith Promise Missions. But can I tell you something? We'll never do it until we first have given ourselves. Let me ask you this question. Have you given yourself to the Lord? Have you actually said, Lord, here am I. Send me, and meant it? Well, see, again, easy to say, a whole lot different to do. Every one of our missionaries on that board said that. Here am I, Lord, send me. And do you think the Pepperdines thought they were going to go to China? I mean, you think about it. A lot of people, when they think of missions, they think of a tropical island, beautiful climate, wonderful food. They don't think of going into communist China, where if they're caught, they're going to jail. We may never hear from them again. They can't look at him and go, I have diplomatic immunity. You're going to jail. That's the way it goes. Here am I, Lord, send me. I'm going to send you to China. Never mind. That's what a lot of us would say, wouldn't it? God, here am I. As long as I get to choose where I'm going, send me. As long as I get to choose what I'm going to do, as long as I get to choose what I'm going to give, as long as I get to choose what I'm going to, everything, here am I, send me. That's not how it goes. It's here am I, send me. I want to be willing to go. I want to be willing to give. I don't want to be forced or give grudgingly or out of necessity. I want to give because I want to be a cheerful giver. I want to have joy. And folks, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that if you give to Faith Promise Missions or if you give a tithe, that God's going to just give you $1 million every time you put something in the plate. It's not going to happen. Now, if He wants it to, it can. But that's not biblical. That's some of these prosperity gospel preachers will tell you. Man, you put $100 in the plate and God will give you 1,000. No. I mean, we went back to what we looked at last week with Elijah. And the lady had just enough to make a cake for her and her son. And he said, give me a cake first. And she did. And you know what? Every time she reached in to get more flour out, she had it. See, God provided. She gave sacrificially. And then every time she reached into that bowl, it came out by faith and found more. To provide not just for her and her son, but also for Elijah. And see, do you understand that? She didn't all of a sudden have so much flour she didn't know what to do with it. She didn't all of a sudden have 45 containers of flour laying around going, oh my word, I gave to him and look what God did. No, just every time she reached in, she had more. He'll take care of our needs. He's just asking us to give a little above what our tithe is. But first of all, have you given yourself? Second of all, are you willing? Are you willing to say, Lord, I'll give whatever you want me to give, and I'll go wherever you want me to go? So we've got to be willing. And this is what we're looking at here. And then are we giving because we love? That's the hard part. God, I love you. I'm just not willing to do anything for you. What if God said that to you? I love you, I'm just not going to do anything for you. What if you said that to your kids? I love you, but not going to do anything for you. I know you're only 3 months old, but I have to deal with it on your own. That's how it should be. We should be looking at it, as it says in verse 8, not by commandment, not by making you do it, grudgingly or necessity, but by occasion of the forwardness of others willingly, and to prove the sincerity of your love. It's an act of worship. Let's bow our heads, please, this morning. The exhortation of Faith Promise. Have you given of yourself willingly? Maybe that's something you've never done. Maybe you've sat in a pew your entire life and you've never said, Lord, here am I, send me. Lord, I'll do whatever you want me to do. I'll go wherever you want me to go. Whatever it is, Lord, I'll do it. Doesn't matter. I'll give it. I'll give of myself first. That's the main thing. If you've never done that, this morning, that's the first thing you need to do is give of yourself. This morning, if you've never given of yourself, I pray you'll come to this altar this morning and do business with God. You may say, well, Pastor, I'm willing. I want to go where He wants me to go. Maybe the Lord's been working on you about going to the mission field. Can I just give you a little something right off the bat with that? If you're not doing anything here for missions in terms of telling others, you're not going to do anything on the foreign field. When was the last time you told someone about Christ? When was the last time you handed out a gospel tract? When was the last time you introduced someone to the Savior? I pray that today, if the Lord's working in your heart, you'll come to this altar and ask God to show you, move you, as to who you need to talk to, who you need to go and speak to, and then you'll be obedient to do it. Gracious Heavenly Father, Lord, I pray this morning that thou wouldst have thy perfect will and way in the invitation. Thou wouldst draw unto thyself those that need to come. And that, Father, through it, Lord, it would show us that we need to be more than just hearers of the word, but we need to be doers. We need to be going out and telling others about thee. I pray this all in Jesus' holy and precious name. Amen. With heads bowed and eyes closed, let's stand together, please. And Miss Sarah plays a song of invitation. If you need to come, won't you come this morning?